Welcome back to Undulations. So right now I'm using the Korg SQ1, a sequencer that I use all the time on this channel, and I'm sending a stream of MIDI note data into the Volca Nubase, and that's what's giving us the bass pattern that we're hearing. If I take that same sequence and hook that over to the Volca Drum, it sounds like this. Okay, basically just a metronome. So that fact that the Volca Drum doesn't respond to MIDI note data is gonna have a big effect on our video today about connecting the Volca Drum to other devices. So let's take a step back and think about Volcas in general. There's a MIDI in, which is what I've been using, and then there is a sync in and a sync out. So you can hook up the timing of devices easily with the syncs, and I'll show some example of that. But there's no MIDI out, so you're not going to be using the Volca Drum to control anything. So it's really about how do you control the Volca Drum. And I think you can make the argument that the best way to control the Volca Drum is actually just with the Volca Drum. It's a very powerful and expressive sequencer, and you do have control over the notes as you go through a sequence if you program it directly from the device itself. So what I'm going to be looking at is how we can sort of come up with ways or some angles on getting some different behavior and some more performative type aspects of the Volca Drum. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, even if you limit yourself to this situation of using the SQ1 to control one part on the Volca Drum, you can still do some nice stuff with it. So in the next clip that I'm going to show, I employ the randomness of the SQ1, and I show how that by having the independent sequencers, you can start and stop the Volca Drum while this one keeps on going, and glitch the resonator on here, and it gives some nice sounds. Take a look. Now, my SQ1 is set to MIDI channel 1, and the way that I have the Volca Drum set up right now, that just means that it is going to play part 1. So if I set this to channel 2, then it would play part 2, track 2. So you're only having access to one drum that way. But it turns out that the Volca Drum has a different MIDI mode, and you get to that. You can basically look in the instructions for how to do it, but you start it up with the record button held down. You can choose a single MIDI channel to be able to access all of the drums. And so what that means is that there are some notes, C3, D3, E3, F3, G3, and A3 to control the 6 tracks, as long as your sequencer is on the same channel that you've put the Volca Drum into on this single channel mode. And so what does that sound like? Take a look. Now, if you look at that clip carefully, you'll see that it's only playing one drum hit at a time. The SQ1 can't do any sort of polyphony, but it's still nice to be able to just use this device to set up a drum groove like that. And you just have to fine tune the notes. I suggest that you use the step jump feature to fine tune each step as you want it. And you can make a sort of monophonic pattern like that really easily. So it's quite handy. Okay, so let's leave MIDI behind for a minute and just talk about synchronization. So this is just to put the steps of your sequencer on the Volca drum and some other device in sync, and you can either use the Volca drum to send sync signals out into another device or vice versa, and it's quite simple. So I'm just going to show a few examples of that. To start with, the Modal Craft Synth, which I did a few videos on a while back. And synchronization is also very easy to do with pocket operators. Here's a weird little something that I did with the PO35 Speak. Now, the Arturia MicroFreak has got ports on the back labeled clock in and out, but they serve well as a synchronization port. So take a look at this. And of course, you can synchronize the Volca drum with other Volcas. This next clip is with the Volca Keys. And I want to call your attention to something unusual about it, which is I decided that I would like to try using slicing, and that's on the Volca drum. So I'm having a lot of hits come very quickly, but I've turned the tempo way down. So it kind of sounds a little bit of a normal tempo and sort of breakbeaty, but then along with going to the half tempo on the Volca Keys, it enables me to have some very slow note and chord changes on the keys, and I think it gives a nice effect. And now in this next demo, I'm back to using the SQ1, but instead of using it for MIDI out, as I was showing at the beginning of the video, I'm just using it for synchronization. So the actual sequence is coming from the Volca Drum, and then I'm using the CV coming out of the SQ1 to control this SoftPop Synth from Bastl Instruments. And so think about that, where the synchronization provides a scheme not just to hook two instruments together, but to have sort of a conductor that is controlling multiple instruments. Check it out. All right, now we're getting warmed up, and if there's one thing that I really want out of the Volca Drum is for it to be more than just a drum machine. If you look at the last couple of videos I did, I really want it to be a synthesizer too, so that you can have sort of this ensemble behavior of maybe 4 drums, 1 bass, 1 melody, and I think that that is where, for me, a lot of the power in this device lies. So, while, as I've said, there is no way to send MIDI note data to it and get any type of pitch changes, there is a pitch parameter on the Volca Drum. And it's accessed, if you look at the MIDI implementation chart, which for any of this type of thing, that's where you're going to have to go. So you go to Korg, you go to the Volca Drum page, and then under the downloads, they'll have the implementation chart. And by the way, if anybody has any specific questions about how to do any of these demos, feel free to ask. I'm going to put a lot more info in the description of this video, but if there's something specific, just leave me a comment and I will try to answer it. But MIDI implementation chart, and you can find out what control change number is used to change the pitch on the Volca Drum. And then there are different ways to do it. You could probably do it through a DAW, but I decided to just write like 1 or 2 lines of code in the language processing, which I show on this channel fairly often. And just to give you a breakdown of what happens in this next clip, I have a sequence running on the SQ1, and it goes by USB into my computer, and that sequence is picked up. The MIDI notes are picked up in processing, but then I have processing send a given MIDI note back out as a control change to the right CC value, and that comes through USB again into this MIDI 2x2 box, which is relatively inexpensive. I think it's something like 50 bucks. And then that goes into the Volca Drum. So the SQ1 is sending MIDI note data to the computer, and then the computer is sending MIDI CC pitch data to the Volca Drum. I've got the 2 devices synced, and then I've also got some other hits on the other tracks as well. And so this is how that all sounds put together. And so that method enables me to use features of the SQ1 like step jump to be able to control the melody on the Volca drum, which is very nice. Now, I've just got a couple more demos to do in this video, and at this point I'd like to say that the next two things, which are going to be with the Arturia BeatStep Pro, and after that Ableton Live, they're both very powerful methods, but if you think about it, the BeatStep Pro, I mean, if you don't have one, well, it's like twice as much as the Volca drum in the first place. So the Volca drum itself, with motion sequencing and parameter locking and very sophisticated sequencing in general, I don't know, maybe that's just something to stay with. But if you've got a BeatStep Pro or want a BeatStep Pro for other reasons, or it's just maybe you think it's your thing, then go for it. There is a ton that you can do with it. I have this set up. I sort of vacillated between, do I use a single channel? Do I use the multi-channel? I ended up going with the multiple channel, which is where like channel 1 notes, even though they don't control any pitch, you can just use any note. A channel 1 note does track 1, channel 2, track 2. So that's the multi or split MIDI configuration that they call it. And so I took some time to set things up with the BeatStep Pro. First part is just basic, where that I've got some different sequences for each of the drum tracks on the Volca drum. And so that is fairly normal. But then what I added in was some control. There's a control mode on here that lets me map these knobs to different things on the device. I went with, I think it was the level, the pitch, and then the modulation amount and rate for the first part or track, the second track, the third track, and then I used these knobs to change the resonator. Then I made some toggles down here to be able to turn the resonator send on and off. And so it's quite a bit going on. And I think it's the sort of thing that's so customizable that basically everybody would set it up differently. So take a look at what I did, and maybe that'll inspire some things that you would like to do with your setup. Now, to close this video out, my last demo is going to be using Ableton Live to control the Volca Drum. I used a MIDI 2x2 box like this one, but I want to point out that you could just use the SQ1 as a MIDI relay. So USB from the computer into the SQ1 and then out over to the Volca Drum. So if you've got an SQ1, you don't really need anything else to do this. And I do recommend it. The DAW is a very powerful way to control the Volca Drum because you can set it up to where each track in the DAW corresponds to a track or part on the drum. And that way you've got all this control over the note data as typical to a DAW, so you're not limited to certain sequencer patterns or anything like that. It can be much longer form, but by using the control change automation lanes, you can also have control over the different Volca Drum parameters. And so that's basically every parameter as a function of time for every part on there. And it's super powerful. So in this demo though, I'm going to focus on pitch and changing the resonator as well. And I'm going to throw in some reverb, going for sort of a spacey type of sound. Hope you like it, and thank you very much for watching.